Picture this. It's a Tuesday morning in 79 AD. Children are running through marble streets, merchants are haggling over fresh bread, and wealthy Romans are lounging in their luxurious villas. By Wednesday evening, every single one of them would be dead, frozen in time, perfectly preserved for nearly 2,000 years. Welcome back to Ancient Civilizations, the series. I'm your host, and if you caught our last episode on Atlantis, you know we don't shy away from the impossible. Today's story isn't about a myth. It's about a real city that archaeologists can walk through right now. A city where you can see the exact moment civilization ended. But here's what they don't tell you in history class. The people of Pompeii had warning signs for weeks. So why didn't they run? Mount Vesuvius had been rumbling for days. Small earthquakes shook the region, wells dried up mysteriously. Animals fled the area in droves. The ancient Romans weren't stupid. They knew the mountain was dangerous. In fact, the fertile soil around Vesuvius existed precisely because of previous volcanic eruptions. Yet on that fateful morning of August 24th, 79 AD, thousands of people were going about their daily lives in Pompeii. Bakers were firing their ovens. Gladiators were training in the amphitheater. Families were gathering for the midday meal. Around midday, everything changed. The mountain exploded with tremendous force, shooting volcanic material over 20 miles into the sky. But here's the terrifying part. The explosion wasn't what killed most of the people in Pompeii. What happened next was far worse. When Vesuvius erupted, it shot a column of ash, pumice, and volcanic debris 21 miles into the sky. Imagine a tower of superheated rock and gas reaching into the stratosphere, towering over the countryside. The people of Pompeii looked up and saw what they thought was a strange cloud formation. Pliny the Younger, who witnessed the eruption from across the Bay of Naples, described it as looking like a giant pine tree spreading across the sky. But this wasn't just any cloud. It was a death sentence moving at incredible speed. Within the first hour, pumice stones the size of golf balls began raining down on Pompeii. The city's red-tiled roofs started collapsing under the weight. People grabbed whatever they could and began fleeing toward the harbor, but many made a fatal decision. They went back inside to wait it out. After all, Pompeii had survived earthquakes before. How bad could this be? They had no idea they were living through one of history's most perfectly preserved natural disasters, and the worst was yet to come. For 12 hours, pumice continued to fall. The city was buried under 6 feet of volcanic debris, but many people were still alive, trapped in their homes, waiting for rescue that would never come. Some tried to dig their way out. Others huddled in their strongest rooms, probably praying to their gods for salvation. A few made it to boats and escaped across the bay. But around 1 a.m. on August 25th, Vesuvius delivered its killing blow. The towering column of ash and gas that had been shooting into the sky suddenly collapsed. This created what volcanologists call a pyroclastic flow, a superheated avalanche of gas, ash, and rock moving at over 100 miles per hour, with temperatures exceeding 570 degrees Fahrenheit. To put that in perspective, this wall of death was moving faster than highway traffic and was hot enough to instantly kill anyone it touched. But here's what makes this story so haunting. The pyroclastic flow didn't just kill the people of Pompeii, it preserved them. When that superheated cloud hit Pompeii, it killed every living thing in seconds. The extreme heat didn't burn the bodies. It was so intense that people died instantly from the heat shock and toxic gases. Then, as the flow settled, it created a perfect mold around each victim. Over centuries, the bodies decomposed, leaving behind hollow spaces in the hardened ash. These spaces were perfect three-dimensional records of each person's final moments. When archaeologists discovered these voids in the 1800s, they developed a technique that would revolutionize our understanding of ancient life. They injected plaster into the cavities. What emerged were not just bones or artifacts, but perfect sculptures of human beings caught in their last seconds of life. A man covering his face with his hands, a dog straining against its chain, a family huddled together in their final embrace. But the most disturbing discovery was still to come. and it would reveal something about human nature that archaeologists weren't prepared for. If you're still here, this story is about to take a darker turn. We're going to explore not just how these people died, but what their final moments reveal about who they really were. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because what we've uncovered about Pompeii challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient Roman society. Now let's talk about what the victims' positions tell us about their final moments. One of the most famous casts shows a man who appears to be gasping for air, his mouth open in what looks like a scream. For decades, people assumed he was crying out in terror. Modern analysis revealed something different. He was suffocating as toxic gases filled his lungs. Another cast shows a pregnant woman who died trying to protect her unborn child. Her hands are positioned over her belly, and incredibly, the ash preserved evidence of both mother and fetus. This woman lived 2,000 years ago, yet we can see her maternal instincts in her final pose. Perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery was in the Garden of the Fugitives, where 13 people died together while trying to escape. The plaster casts show adults attempting to shield children with their bodies. One man appears to be looking back toward the city, possibly waiting for someone who never came. But not all the stories are tragic. Some reveal the complexity of Roman society in ways that would have been impossible to discover otherwise. In one villa, archaeologists found the cast of a man wearing expensive jewelry, lying next to a woman in simple clothing. Based on their positions, it appears they died holding hands. This challenged assumptions about Roman class structure. Their final act was one of human connection that transcended social boundaries. However, not every story from Pompeii is noble. Some discoveries reveal the darker aspects of Roman society preserved with brutal honesty. In the gladiator barracks, archaeologists found the bodies of gladiators who were locked in their quarters when Vesuvius erupted. They died not in glorious combat, but as prisoners. One was found still wearing leg irons. Even more disturbing were the discoveries in some of the wealthier homes. In several villas, the casts show what appear to be servants who may have been abandoned by their masters during the evacuation. Some died in storage areas where they might have been trapped. One villa contained the cast of a man clutching valuable items. He had apparently stayed behind to save his possessions and died for it. His remains showed he was well-fed and healthy, clearly a person of means who chose wealth over life. But perhaps the most significant discovery was how the disaster unfolded over time. Here's what modern archaeology has revealed. The destruction of Pompeii wasn't a single catastrophic moment. It was an 18-hour nightmare with multiple phases of death and destruction. During the first 12 hours, while pumice rained down, many people had opportunities to escape. Some did flee successfully. Others made the fatal decision to shelter in place. Archaeological evidence shows that people were making choices throughout the disaster. Some tried to rescue others, some attempted to save valuables, and some simply tried to survive. The pyroclastic flows came in multiple surges. People who survived earlier waves were often killed by later ones. Some casts show people who had clearly been attempting to help others, only to be caught in subsequent flows. This discovery led to a sobering realization. Some people in Pompeii might have lived for hours after the initial eruption, trapped in partially collapsed buildings, making desperate decisions about whether to stay or try to escape. But the most important discovery wasn't about how they died. It was about how they lived. The preservation of Pompeii gave us an unprecedented window into daily life in the ancient world. But it also revealed something profound about human psychology. These people lived with the constant knowledge that Vesuvius was dangerous, yet they built one of the most vibrant cities in the Roman Empire. The soil around Vesuvius was incredibly fertile because of previous eruptions. The Romans knew this. They understood that the mountain's violence created the abundance that made their lives possible. In a sense, they made a collective decision to live with risk in exchange for prosperity. This wasn't unique to Pompeii. Throughout history, humans have consistently chosen to live in dangerous places, along fault lines, near active volcanoes, in flood zones, because these same geological forces create wealth and beauty. The people of Pompeii weren't naive. They were making a calculated gamble that many of us make every day. They just happened to lose. But recent discoveries have revealed that not everyone who stayed in Pompeii died there. For years, historians assumed that everyone who remained in Pompeii perished. Archaeological evidence from the harbor area tells a different story. Excavations have found signs of hasty evacuation, abandoned boats, scattered cargo, and personal possessions dropped in apparent panic. The positioning of some objects suggests that people had time to make deliberate choices about what to take and what to leave behind. Some grabbed jewelry and coins. Others took food and water. A few apparently tried to save their household gods. Small statues that were considered essential for family protection. More intriguingly, some buildings show evidence of post-eruption entry attempts. Walls were broken through in patterns consistent with rescue efforts. This suggests that people who had successfully fled early may have returned to search for survivors or attempt to recover valuables. However, many of these apparent rescue attempts ended in tragedy. Some of the bodies found in Pompeii may actually be would-be rescuers who died trying to save others. The story becomes even more complex when we consider the eyewitness accounts that survived. We actually have detailed eyewitness accounts of Vesuvius's eruption. Pliny the Younger wrote two famous letters to the historian Tacitus, describing exactly what he saw from across the Bay of Naples. His descriptions were so accurate that volcanologists still use them to classify similar eruptions. They're called Plinian eruptions in his honor. Pliny described the terror of people fleeing in boats, the darkness that fell over the region like night, and the earthquakes that continued for days after the main eruption. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, actually died trying to rescue friends from the disaster zone, making him one of history's first recorded volcanologists. But Pliny wasn't the only witness. Inscriptions found in other Roman cities reference refugees from the Vesuvius region. Some survivors apparently made it to Rome and other distant cities, where they left records of their experiences. These accounts reveal that people throughout the Roman world understood this was an unprecedented disaster. The Emperor Titus organized relief efforts for survivors and began reconstruction in the affected areas. However, these survivor accounts also reveal something that changes our understanding of the disaster entirely. Here's what the historical record shows. The people of Pompeii had extensive warning that something was wrong. For weeks before the major eruption, there were earthquakes, strange sounds from the mountain, and other ominous signs. Roman writers recorded these warning signs, and there's evidence that some officials understood the danger. Yet most people stayed. Why? The answer lies in human psychology and previous experience. Vesuvius had produced false alarms before. Small earthquakes were common in the region. The mountain had been threatening to erupt for years without doing so. People had learned to live with the warnings. They had normalized the risk. This is a pattern we see repeatedly throughout history. Communities that live with constant low-level danger often become desensitized to warning signs. The very adaptability that allows people to thrive in risky environments can become a liability when real catastrophe strikes. The people of Pompeii weren't victims of ignorance. They were victims of a very human tendency to believe that tomorrow will be like today. Modern technology has revolutionized what we can learn from Pompeii's victims. CT scans reveal details about their health, diet, and final moments. Analysis of stomach contents has shown what people ate in their last meals. Dental examinations reveal information about their social status and access to medical care. Perhaps most remarkably, scientists have been able to determine that many people died from asphyxiation and heat shock rather than from being buried in ash. The toxic gases in the pyroclastic flows would have been fatal within seconds. These technologies have also revealed that many of the people in Pompeii were already dealing with health challenges before the eruption. Lead poisoning from water pipes, malnutrition, and various diseases were widespread. The disaster struck a population that was already vulnerable in many ways. Modern volcanologists study Pompeii not just to understand the past, but to prepare for the future. Vesuvius is still active, and over 600,000 people currently live in the danger zone around it. They've chosen the same gamble the ancient Romans made, to live with risk in exchange for the benefits that volcanic soil provides. The techniques developed to study Pompeii are now used to prepare for future volcanic disasters worldwide. What makes Pompeii extraordinary isn't just the preservation. It's what the preservation reveals about human nature. In their final moments, many people chose to help others rather than save themselves. Parents shielded children. Some individuals attempted to rescue neighbors. Others faced death with apparent dignity and composure. The plaster casts aren't just archaeological artifacts. They're portraits of individual human beings who lived complex lives and faced an impossible situation with recognizably human responses. Today, Pompeii receives millions of visitors annually, making it one of Italy's most important archaeological sites. Each visitor walks through streets where real people lived, worked, loved, and ultimately died. The site serves as both a window into the ancient world and a reminder of nature's power. But perhaps most importantly, Pompeii teaches us about resilience. Despite the complete destruction of their city, Roman civilization continued. Survivors rebuilt their lives elsewhere. The empire adapted and persevered. The story of Pompeii reminds us that while individual communities may be vulnerable to catastrophe, human civilization as a whole has proven remarkably resilient throughout history. The civilization that vanished in 24 hours teaches us something profound about the human condition. We're remarkably good at adapting to risk, but we sometimes struggle to recognize when that risk becomes reality. The people of Pompeii made rational decisions based on their experience and knowledge. They simply faced a disaster beyond their ability to predict or control. Their story also reveals incredible examples of courage, love, and sacrifice. In the face of the unthinkable, many chose compassion over self-preservation. They faced catastrophe with dignity that still moves us nearly 2,000 years later. Modern Pompeii stands as both a tourist attraction and a scientific laboratory. Researchers continue to make new discoveries that deepen our understanding of both ancient Roman life and volcanic disasters. Every new finding adds another piece to the puzzle of what happened during those fateful 18 hours in 79 AD. The site also serves as a powerful reminder that the forces that shaped the ancient world are still active today. Vesuvius continues to threaten the modern communities built in its shadow, just as it threatened Pompeii 2 millennia ago. If this story captivated you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales from ancient civilizations. Drop a comment and let me know. Would you have heeded the warning signs and fled, or stayed to protect your home and possessions? Next week in episode 3, we're exploring the empire that conquered without war, the story of a civilization that built one of history's largest empires without fighting a single battle. How is that even possible? You'll have to subscribe to find out. And if you missed our previous episode about Atlantis being real, there's a link in the description that will completely change how you think about ancient history. Until next time, remember, history isn't just about what happened. It's about understanding how humans respond when everything familiar suddenly changes forever.